Paper was like gold in medieval times.
Oh, not tobacco, sugar.
That everything we thought we knew about the world might turn out to be completely wrong.
Wilderness. The very stuff America was made of. And Americans too. Vast, yet intimate. Listen. It is the music of the original American earth. In 1964, Congress passed a law that began setting aside remnants of the untamed land that helped make this country great. Passing this historic conservation law took 8 years, but Republicans, led by conservative Congressman John Saylor of Pennsylvania, and Democrats, led by liberal Senator Hubert Humphrey, were faithful to the vision. In the end, the Wilderness Act passed Congress by an overwhelming bipartisan vote. And on September 3rd, 1964, the Wilderness Act became law, signed by President Lyndon Johnson.
Members of the Cabinet and the Congress, ladies and gentlemen, this is a very happy and historic occasion for all who love the great American outdoors. Americans have wisely and have courageously kept a faithful trust to the conservation of our natural resources and beauty.
The Wilderness Act defines wilderness as an undeveloped natural area that is managed as free from human influence as possible. Congress meant for these lands to be the antidote to our growing population, crowding, and dependence on machines. To millions of Americans, wilderness is all this and more. It's central to their lives. Hi, I'm Christopher Reeve, and for the next hour, I want to bring you the voices of ordinary citizens, just sharing their American values for American wilderness.
I feel wilderness is a part of me. People always feel like there's a missing piece of their heart. When I come out here, it's like I'm fulfilled.
When I come here by myself, I feel tranquil. When I come here with children, I feel like I'm passing on something that was given to me, a gift, onto somebody else.
If there was no wilderness, I think humankind would be lost. Without these places, we would be cold, hard. We wouldn't have any real foundation.
I think wilderness says a lot about us as a nation. I think it speaks to our humility and our temperance and the fact that we were able to set these places aside.
Sound and scent and touch, the feeling of the desert, the dry air on your skin, and the moist air of the Arctic on your face. It wakes you up and you join the human race.
Some parts of national forests are designated wilderness, as are parts of the public land under the care of the Bureau of Land Management. Some parts of national parks have also been declared wilderness areas by Congress. Likewise, some U.S. Fish and Wildlife refuges are also wilderness. But regardless of which agency manages a wilderness, Americans value these areas for a wide variety of reasons. And often these values develop from experiences early in life or values passed down through their families.
This is my first time. My family came from Cambodia. We were sponsored to America. My first impression of wilderness, it was amazing, the beauty of nature. Everything, the clouds, the trees, the waterfalls. I would love to come back to the wilderness and explore more.
I guess that I was about 10 or 11 years old, and I hiked up the Mission Canyon to Elizabeth Falls, and from that point on, I knew it was a special place. I don't have a real formal educational background. From the time I was 11 years old, I would hunt and fish with my uncles and friends and spent a great deal in the backcountry. I was one of the first employees hired by the tribe as a wilderness ranger. And I remember at the interview, I said if I didn't need the money to feed my family, I'd work for nothing. Over the years, I've tried to think about what made it special. Obviously, the beauty and the ruggedness just takes your breath away. But in later years, you start to realize it's something more than just a visual beauty. It's almost unexplainable. This backdrop in the background behind me is an area that is just as sacred as my church. Yeah, you feel our ancestors and you feel the sacredness of the area.
The first trip that I really remember was backpacking up the east side of the Sierra Nevadas over Kearsarge Pass in California. I've been disabled since infancy and walk with a leg brace and a cane, and at that time I could hike pretty well, I just couldn't carry extra weight, so my brother carried the weight for both of us. And that I think was the first time that I actually appreciated being away from a road where I had to be self-sufficient, and at the same time I could enjoy that freedom of being away from civilization.
Wilderness has always been a part of my heritage. Growing up in Michigan, I canoed on the lakes. My father, grandfather, and great-grandfather all were hunters and fished. I was taught from a very young age to appreciate preservation of the wilderness, and I feel very fortunate that I had that type of upbringing, because many people, and particularly people of color, many people of color did not. What I'd like to do more than anything is pass that heritage and pass that legacy down to other youth, particularly youth of color who live in the city, who would not have an opportunity to enjoy the wilderness and pristine areas as I did growing up and as I still continue to do.
When I came to the Everglades for the very first time, I was in 6th grade. I came on a 3-day field trip. Those 3 days were just amazing. The crisp breeze, the animals, the sounds were so different from what I experienced back home, from what I saw on a day-to-day. It was a completely different world. It was almost as if I was not even on Earth anymore. I was transformed into a different person. It's difficult to even find the word. It's just a wonderful feeling all over, from the inside out. And as a child, those are not feelings that one is familiar with too frequently.
I grew up in Washington, D.C., and my father was the chief investigator for the entomology department in the Forest Service. And he loved the outdoors, and as soon as school was out and on the weekends, he'd take my brothers, Frank and John and me, out along the Potomac River, and he taught us all the plants and animals, and where the wild asparagus grew, and how to make fishing hooks out of twigs and ropes out of the inner bark of the basswood. And we would canoe and fish. He taught us a respect for nature and a love of it. He would have us sit for hours beside a trapdoor spider, saying, "Oh, look, watch this now." And it was infectious. The silence and discipline of being out in the woods all added to a very rich life and a peaceful one.
My mom talks about going up on the Chunle. That's the mountain to the southwest side of our village, and going hunting when she was pregnant with me. And my earliest memories are, I don't know how old I was, but I was very, very young, and we were up on the mountain hunting, and I remember running up the mountain. I remember every feeling. I was cold, I was tired, I wanted to go back to camp. They wrapped us in caribou hides, and they gave us the milk from the caribou. And we got warm, and then we got relaxed, and all of us kids just slept while they finished up.
I spent the first 16 years of my life every summer in Yosemite National Park, and that was our family vacation. And the 2 weeks in Yosemite was pretty much what we could afford and what my father really enjoyed doing, and I saw my father in kind of a new light in those 2 weeks. I was able to interact with him and my mom and my family in ways that were new and different. Fishing with my dad in fairly remote parts of the park came to mean something very special to me. Took my first trip in wilderness with my two boys last summer, and I was impressed with the way we connected in that setting. We were interacting in ways that my father and I interacted back when I was their age.
I'm a horse outfitter. A lot of outfitters outfit mountain climbing expeditions, outfit hiking trips, outfit llama trips and goat trips and river rafting trips. Over the years, over the 35 years, I imagine that I've packed out over 2,000 people. I would imagine that thousands of outfitters make their living, or a good part of their living, taking trips into the wilderness. There isn't a positive, viable, sustainable economic use of wilderness. I'm one of them, and I believe in that. The flip side is that it's irrelevant. The flip side is that wild lands and wilderness exist for entirely other reasons. Wilderness exist in order to give the planet an opportunity to have spaces where nature can express itself without man's interference. So wilderness areas aren't locked up in the sense that they are of no use, because they're always of use, if to nobody else but the planet itself.
Americans from all walks of life appreciate wilderness as a critical sanctuary for plants and animals.
We as humans, we tend to see things as we're the only ones out here. And everything in the world is a balance. We have to realize that no matter how tiny the creature we may not even see, it does serve a purpose in our world. If you start taking that away, then slowly but surely, you may not realize it right away, but at some point, it'll come back and it will affect you.
It's our genetic endowment as a world community. I mean, they reflect this richness that we've been lucky to inherit, that without which our lives would be greatly diminished.
We were the first tribe that designated an area for wilderness. If there was no Wilderness Act, then we would have been the first ones to create a wilderness because we saw the value. What prompted the tribe to designate 89,000 acres as wilderness is that the front of these missions were being proposed to harvest for timber. Most of our people, like myself, feel that not every piece of timbered area should be harvested or managed for monetary values. And so the Tribal Council designated this area as wilderness. The wilderness designation obviously parallels what the Federal Wilderness Act does, but I think ours is even stronger. We, for example, protect the grizzly bear in this area. We close off 10,000 acres from July 15th to October 1st every year, and we don't even allow our own members to visit that area, and they support that. I feel proud that there's a healthy grizzly population in the Mission Mountains. I think they're not only a sacred animal, but they're an animal that truly is an indicator species of what kind of a management job that we're doing as a tribe.
I would say that there are certain areas that man is a visitor and should not remain. The birthplace and nursery of the caribou. Our people have always believed that it's sacred. We don't go there when they're using it to give birth to their young. We have to allow them that time, and our people also believe that about salmon spawning areas, about areas that are vital to the perpetuation of life. We leave these areas alone.
I wanted to write when I was in 3rd grade, and I wrote about many things, but the things I wrote best about were the wild animals and the outdoors and young people interacting with nature, and I've been doing that ever since. I want to show you one of the books, sketches I make when I'm out in the wilderness, and it's right in here. I love to paint. I felt very early on as a child when I began writing that if I could illustrate what I was doing, maybe that would move the feelings and I wanted to get across along a little better. Oh, they're beautiful. They're so graceful. And it adds to my writing, I think. It makes it a little more believable. Yeah, here's Julia the Wolf. This is the original cover. And my side of the mountain, this is the very first copy of that. First edition. It's sold, now it's sold over 8 million copies since it. Kids like it. They like to feel independent. This is my side of the mountain that won the Newbery Honor. And again, these are the plants that I ate along the Potomac River with my father. I put them in the book, and I also showed them how to make wooden fish hooks from thorns and twigs, all the things that we did as youngsters. And I trained a falcon. So when Sam was hard up for food, I had him train a falcon, and then he just sailed right along. And Julia the Wolves, I wrote after I had spent a summer in the Arctic at the Naval Arctic Research Lab studying The wolf. She was my first female protagonist. When I was writing Julie, I thought, now I've been out doing all these things. This time I will make the protagonist a girl. And so I did. I want to save the places where all the unique plants and animals are. Even if I never go there, I'll never go to some of these wonderful wildernesses, but I want to know they're there. And I think most people do.
Ultimately, what we're doing with wilderness protection is protecting wildlands that, in my opinion, have an intrinsic right to exist. The fact that they serve purposes to those of us who appreciate wilderness is wonderful. The fact that they serve as a control where we can compare what we've done to the world and our civilization to what was natural is of value. What counts for me is the fact that some of these places, some of these islands of wildness and beauty and silence and night skies are protected inviolate as the craziness of civilization encroaches upon it.
Americans know wilderness is for people too. All of us benefit from the existence of these places, and they're part of our national heritage.
This area is not just an area of beauty, to me it's a grocery store. A lot of the things that our people have used over hundreds of years, they still do. Some of our folks still come back here not only for spiritual encounters and vision quests, but to collect medicinal plants. So the point is that that chain hasn't been broken, it still continues today.
One can't put a price on essential elements like clean air, clean water, and an unpolluted environment. Protection and stewardship of the wilderness areas is not just for those who enjoy those areas, it's for everyone.
I think that wilderness speaks to, it kind of lies at the heart of democracy in that it's open to all people. And I think that wilderness, along with all public lands, are going to become more and more important to the disenfranchised, the marginalized segments of our population, as a place to go, as a safe haven to recreate, but also a place that brings with it a lot of environmental services. Things like endangered species protection, wildlife habitat protection, soil, water conservation, air, water quality issues, the environmental system values that we get from wilderness areas certainly are a birthright of all Americans. These type of environments become that much more critical as we grow and continue to expand to our limits and beyond. It's very difficult for me to sit here and try to put a price tag on some of those values. They're priceless.
What right do we have to take that away from our great-great-grandchildren? To take the air that they breathe, the water that they drink? What right do we have to deny them what we have today? We don't have that right.
I think that one of the great things about our country is that we still have wildlands that are part of what our character evolved around. They helped us become who we are. And that kind of value, I think, maybe it's not obvious to people, but I think somewhere in our souls we know that that's important in this country. It's something we're proud of.
Of course, Americans love to go to the wilderness for recreation, primitive recreation without using motors. Riding horses, canoeing, hiking, floating rafts, even dog sledding. And often, these recreational experiences change a person.
Bringing students out here, it's amazing what 3 days can do. They come out here being one person, and at the end of the 3 days, they're a completely different student.
So how is this place different from where you guys live? Anybody want to share what you think? Yes.
It's more wild and quiet.
It's
so quiet out here right now.
Amazing how much they go home and almost yank their parents by the ears to come out here. You need to experience what we experience, they say, and it's spectacular. It's everything that I look for. It's everything that I work for.
When we bring inner city kids from Metro Denver into the outdoors for the first time, it's like an awakening. It's comparable to a caterpillar coming out as a moth. A total spiritual awakening, a total physical awakening.
My greatest accomplishment would be hiking up all the way to the top of that mountain and staring down and seeing the beautiful valley below and feeling it. It was the most incredible thing I've ever felt in my life. It was beautiful. I think that I'm a different person out here. I'm not so worried. I'm not so anxious. I'm not tensed up like I was in the city. I feel like there's spirits out here, unseen spirits. I can hear the sound of the river flowing, just rushing softly. It's like a lullaby. No singing, but you can hear its rhythm. I can hear its beat, and I start to fall asleep. And then just the soothing, softly wind, the cold night.
To sleep here, oh my, to sleep outside was my first time ever sleeping outside. I wake up early in the morning to see the sunrise and how it rises over the river and the mountains. It's really peaceful, especially by the water.
Being in the wilderness relaxes me and comforts me. In the city, it's busy, it has a lot of noise, like you don't get much solitude, but out in the wilderness, you get a lot of solitude. You started right there. You get education, you get outdoor education. That's what I figured out about it. It has no TV, but it's fun.
We brought a group of parents last year, and they were like, we're not going out there, you're crazy. We're not going in the water. The second they stepped in the water and they shared that experience with their kids, they said, you gave me an opportunity to realize what I've been missing for so many years.
Nice workout.
I guess somehow it got lost in the back of their mind. It was there. They just need somebody to bring it to the forefront.
The wilderness really brings out like truth in my eyes. It's the pureness back into the old ways. In the city, I just feel like I'm stretched in every which way, but now I feel like I'm whole again. It just brings me back to my roots, to my culture, just back to myself.
You know, you see a lot of changes in people from the first day to the last day of the trip, and I think perhaps the most salient kind of change that you see, the most obvious one, are people that have very little confidence when they get there. I mean, something happens, that these people find something close to their center in this sort of primordial place. And people come out of there with a real, with a real awareness of the fact that they've been a part of that landscape for 6 or 7 or 8 days. And I use that word carefully, that they've become a part of it, as opposed to apart from it. And that's, to me, the secret. That's what I try to do.
I can still feel myself going off with my son Luke into a wilderness in Wyoming. It was this a door had closed behind us, and there was such peace of mind along that trail that I have never found anywhere else. Just to remove the clutter from our life for 2 days and sit there with a child you love is an experience that lasts for years and years. In fact, I haven't camped out in a tent for quite a while, and I look at the woods as I drive through this glorious eastern deciduous forest and think, oh, just to crawl into a tent and spend the night again on the floor of this forest would be an experience. It's harder to crawl in and out of a tent at my age. That's the main problem. I'm going to try to get back up to the Arctic this summer, into that wilderness. When I sat out there on the sea ice and heard the song and the murmuring of the ice and the seals and the whales, and watched this vast world that would vanish, comes the sun of summer, and realize how fragile and amazing the wilderness is.
But for many Americans, the experience that's important in wilderness is more than just visiting a place for physical exertion and beautiful scenery.
I couldn't walk until I was 5 years old, and my recreation, instead of running around screaming, consisted of observing the natural world, the wildlife around me, the plants, sensing what was going on with the wind, those kinds of things. And I think that forced attention that I gave by default to the natural world helped sensitize me to a deep appreciation of nature, which in subsequent years transferred to an appreciation for wilderness, because that's where nature still has the most control and is the healthiest. It's a place where I can slow down and think, and in many ways it's where I can measure my life. I can measure how I'm doing, because those distractions of civilization aren't present. And that's one of the great values of wilderness for me, just to sit quietly, to center myself. I remember the day that I found out that my mother had died. All I could do is go into wild country that afternoon. That was the only release for me. It wasn't visiting friends, it wasn't going to some social place. It was just going off by myself and rethinking my life and reorienting my life. And the place that I do that best is in wilderness.
I can't imagine life without the wilderness. Being in an area that is totally unspoiled, being at a pristine alpine lake, being on a mountain path, being under the night sky, it connects me with nature in a way that being in an urban environment or on my front porch or in my backyard could never do.
Places like this bring me hope. Without the sound of the birds, without the sound of the breeze through the sawgrass, without being able to canoe, without being able to see the moon rise in the middle of the day, strangely as it sounds, those are the things that make my life complete. They give me hope for a better tomorrow. To be able to teach those children that I love so very much the importance of becoming an educated adult, the importance of getting out there in life and making that much more of a difference.
The reason I guess that I keep coming back to this and have kept coming back to this over the years is it's just like seeing an old friend. You know, a sight that just absolutely triggers my most spiritual being. It just really hooks me every time. It's like coming home again.
Anybody can have that connection if they're open to that connection. And I think that it's vital to our spirituality. Even in the European Bible, where was the closest connection between the prophets and the Creator? It was in the wilderness. And that's the same belief that our Native people have. When we need to go out to be close to the Creator, we go to these special places. I have to go someplace that's wild. I have to hear the wind. I have to hear the river. When I'm on the land, I become a whole person again. My eyesight becomes clearer. My hearing becomes clearer. My whole inner being becomes at peace with everything, and I feel like I am connected again. I think there's healing when you go out on the land. I believe that any person can go anywhere that is wild and natural, and they become closer to the Creator, to everything in our environment, and they become whole inside.
If there were no wilderness, United States would look just technology, just cars, machines. Would be nothing natural. Be dull, gray, metal. Wilderness it brings harmony. It brings serenity, the peace we all look for. You can just listen to the river and you hear yourself. You can hear your own self echo inside.
Despite the rigors of wilderness travel, motors are forbidden, even bicycles. People of varying abilities visit these special places for renewal and respite from our technological world, seeking a more intimate contact with their surroundings. Many people grow through the challenge offered by living for a time, whether a few hours or a few weeks, without the machines that insulate us from our environment.
Over time, it's become harder for me to walk. When I was in my 20s, I could walk several miles a day. Now I can hardly walk any distance at all. And now the way I get into wilderness is either by horseback, by canoe or raft, or walking a short distance into the wilderness, which also is a wonderful experience for me still. The value of wilderness to me hasn't changed at all as my disability has progressed, because the things that I always valued in wilderness, those interests and needs haven't changed at all for me. People will sometimes say, well, gee, Greg, don't you think that to serve the disabled population, the aged population, it's important that we put roads and motorized access farther and farther into our wild country? And I always tell people that for me, that's not the case at all, because what I want to do is get away from the road, get away from motors. And if you push the threshold farther into the wilderness, I just have to go that much farther to start over for that experience I'm looking for.
When I first had a diagnosis after a surgery, when they removed a tumor and they gave me a diagnosis of possibly only living 8 more months, I had a hard time coping with that diagnosis. I found myself escaping to places that I'd been and thinking of wild places, and it just brought me some peace and some solitude, kind of as an escape. After I'd been in the hospital and through treatment and did this whole treatment plan, we didn't know what to think. We didn't know whether I would live very long or not. But the first thing we did, we realized what our priorities were. When I felt well enough, we planned a long hike down the Continental Divide Trail of Montana, just a few days into the trip. And when the cancer thing was, fairly fresh in our minds, and we walked right into a place where a grizzly bear was grazing in a meadow, and it ended up following us for over a mile, and it was really, really scary, and it kind of made us think, what are we doing? I just survived cancer, and now we're out here, interacting with grizzly bears, and are we crazy and all that? It really made us reflect on what we were doing. And once we got out of there and kind of got through the shakiness of that day, we decided that was real, and that's what we wanted to do. I went for a checkup right at the beginning of the trip. We walked 800 miles, and I went for a checkup right at the end of the trip. And it's been 8.5 years since my last treatment.
Interact Center is a theater and a visual arts gallery, and it's also a day program for adults with disability labels. Interact Center teamed up with Wilderness Inquiry to bring our artists up for an arts retreat to the Boundary Waters Canoe Wilderness in winter to revel in nature at this time of year, to be inspired, to force ourselves physically, which helps to force ourselves spiritually and emotionally and artistically. A lot of people that are at Interact would never have an opportunity to do something like this, and Wilderness Inquiry allows them to come up here and experience something that they couldn't experience otherwise. We noticed several changes in our participants from coming out into the wilderness. One change we found was that they discovered something about themselves, that they were capable of going beyond the barriers that people have placed on them. They live lives of barriers. You can't do this, you can't do that, you can't find professional training in your craft, you can't be a professional artist, a professional actor, you can't live on your own, you can't go canoeing.
Does Gordo reach? Yeah! Are we perfect or what? We are.
Taking people out into the wilderness releases them further from the boundaries that society puts on them. They relax and they let their artistic freedom out, and they create art that is inspired by the wilderness. But beyond that experience, coming back home, they then realize when they come up against a barrier that it's not a real barrier for them, it's a barrier that society has put on them, and that if they can think of a way around it, they can succeed, that becomes a possibility for them instead of a barrier.
I've been in Interact since May of last year. It's really exciting and fulfilling. At the moment, I'm living at a halfway house, and I've been there since September 20th, year 2002, so I've been there for a while. And oh my goodness, I used to I think I've never been scared the whole day, but part of the day I used to get scared. Being kind of out in the middle of nowhere, you can kind of say, think, and do whatever you want. You don't have to worry about schedules or, deadlines to meet or anything. Things you have to do, you don't have to do any of that. You can just relax and have fun. And I just love it. It's very peaceful. I'm not as scared and not as long as I used to. And it really helps. I look forward to dog sledding this afternoon. And we've gone snowshoeing. We went up snowshoeing yesterday to Caribou Rock, and that was just beautiful up there. I think it's so beautiful and scenic and breathtaking and peaceful. Like the trees are so like innocent. They aren't harmful to you or anything. Nothing to be scared of. So I'm really doing well. Like my routine, I get up in the morning and get ready, you know, and shower and shampoo and stuff. And that used to scare me, and now it doesn't scare me anymore.
This week has been absolutely fantastic for me. I take a look at this as a reprieve from all the noise, from all the humdrum that goes on down in the city, and I was able to focus more on my drawing, more on my artwork. Today the sun is shining, how it lights the snow up, how the sun shines through the trees and the snow actually sparkles. And I'm at peace. I want that to be here for someone else to be able to sit back and look up and say, this is mine. Just for today, this is mine. The quiet, the peacefulness has given me a sort of a rebirth within myself. The drawings that I've done out here, because I'm not distracted by the constant barrage of noise to my system, I'm able to concentrate more on that line, on that form. And I think coming up here, being with other people, I think it's given me more self-confidence and able to handle some things to take a look at some of the things that I was unable to take a look at before. To look at how small I am in comparison with how large nature is. Yeah, it's just absolutely breathtaking. And yesterday was beautiful. Oh, that was absolutely wonderful. I ached like a big dog when I got back, and I wore myself out. But the experience of going up there and the vision to be able to look over that valley with the snow and the distance that I could see. When I come back last night, I hurt so bad I wanted to cry, but I felt so good I wanted to just scream. And it was a combination of both feelings at the same time. You got pain, okay, fine, you got pain all the time, but are you this happy with it? No, you're not. So this little excursion up here says, well, hey, you know, your life is going to be better. Go ahead and do it. Go for it. And so that's what I'm doing, going for it.
For many Americans, wilderness is so important to their lives that it's an essential part of the legacy that they wish to leave behind. For some, this means passing these protected areas and a love for them onto their children and grandchildren. Others communicate an infectious love of wilderness through their life's work.
I used to take all my children when I went on these to write books, because I wanted to get their point of view. And now my granddaughters and grandsons are of the age that I can take them. And I really, when I write my books, I'm not lecturing and telling them to go out and save the wilderness. I want them to come to love them so much that they realize they must save them and that they will take care of their own little ecosystems and try to save them. They can do a lot.
What is that?
I think most Americans feel the wilderness as part of their heritage, and we feel a national yearning to get back to those wild places and find ourselves again. But it's important to the spirit of every American to keep the wilderness intact. And I think I would ache. We can't lose our wilderness.
A lot of our tribal people who support the idea of wilderness, they may have not visited this area for years. Maybe the last time they were back here in the missions were when they were very young. These places are there for not only ourselves, but we want to protect this area for our future generations. I want to be able to say when I leave this place that it's better than when I got here, that I leave it in a better condition for my grandchildren and their children.
That knowledge that there are some gems of nature that are protected in perpetuity in their healthy state is a great knowledge for me, a great strength. And I can stand on the edge of it and look into it, and knowing that it's secure and that it will way outlive me, there's some kind of great satisfaction for me in that knowledge.
I have a 5-year-old daughter, and the kind of legacy that I'd like to leave for her is one which includes wild lands intact. When she's 40 or 50 years old, to take her kids into the same place and have it be not unchanged, because it always changes, but for it to be still wild.
When the Wilderness Act was passed, I think we made a statement about the exploitation of resources and how wilderness preservation fits into a balanced approach to saving pieces of wild tissue for future generations. I think we led the world community in that regard, and I think that there's a spiritual aspect to being immersed in God's handiwork that one doesn't have in other places. I think wilderness provides us with an opportunity for that type of immersion, and that without having had an experience like that, I think one's life is diminished.
My son, he's 1 year old right now. My daughter is 4. She just turned 4. We are already teaching her about our songs, about our dances, about the caribou, about what it means to us. My children's teachings have begun. So for me, it's, if the area was ever accessed and allowed to be exploited, I know our way of life is going to be impacted and devastated. The teachings would end with my children if that happened. We're spiritually connected to that area. We're physically connected, socially connected, and culturally connected. And the loss you cannot describe because it's a loss in your spirit. And no one can ever repair that. Every one of us are going to have to take a stand and say, for my children, I'm going to protect this area. I'm going to stand and protect this area. And as we do this, we are going to give life to our future generations. We don't do this for ourselves. We do this for all humankind. I live here, I work here, but I do care about what happens in Arizona, or what happens in Montana, what happens in the Everglades, because that's going to impact my children. And so I have to care. We all have to care.
I think one of the harder things for us is to slow down, to leave behind that incredible pace, that incredible concern for appointments or phone calls or whatever, and to not feel that you're wasting time by getting attuned to what's going on this planet. Don't worry about the daily pressures of your life. Take 2 or 3 hours and just stop and pay attention and listen and see what you start to feel and what perhaps will enter into your soul from that experience.
At this age, I would love to go back to the Wind Rivers and just sit there again at the foot of a beautiful mountain by a lake and watch the Rocky Mountain sheep clamber up and down on their magic feet and just sit there for days quietly watching.
In the first 40 years since it passed the Wilderness Act, Congress has placed 105 million acres in the National Wilderness Preservation System. Deserts, forests, swamps, mountains, and lake country have been designated, and all but 6 states have federal wilderness areas in them. So far, about 15% of Alaska and less than 3% of our lower 49 states have been preserved. What will the next 40 years bring to these increasingly precious lands? What will we Americans pass on to our children? That is up to you. Well, it's been a while since I've been in a wilderness. It might take a bit longer before I do get to go back to one. But even if that never happens, I will always value the wilderness as much as I always have. I'm Christopher Reeve. Thank you so much for watching.